cheating wife flaunted new AP lingerie. My savage revenge left her shaking. The click of the lock was my cue. I took a slow sip of scotch, the amber liquid burning a familiar path down my throat. The ice clinked softly, a counterpoint to the frantic thump-thump-thump of my heart. I knew that sound. It was the sound of expensive heels on hardwood, the sound of a woman trying too hard, a woman trying to erase the day, the guilt. Tonight, she was wearing something new. I could tell by the way she moved, a little too fluid, a little too self-conscious. Silk whispered against skin. She appeared in the doorway of the living room, a vision in crimson lace. Her smile, meant to be seductive, faltered. Her eyes, usually sparkling with manufactured mischief, widened as they landed on the neat stack of papers on the coffee table, illuminated by the warm glow of the lamp. Receipts. Her hand flew to her throat in a delicate, fluttering touch. The crimson lace trembled against the sudden, rapid beat of her heart. I watched her, a silent observer, as the blood drained from her face. She knew. What are these?" she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. I swirled the scotch in my glass, the ice clicking again, a small, sharp sound in the sudden silence. "Evidence," I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. "Evidence of your deceit." The receipts detailed everything, the clandestine hotel stays, the romantic dinners, the extravagant gifts. A year of lies, meticulously documented. I had even included the receipt for the lingerie she was wearing, a cruel little flourish. "John, I can explain," she began, her voice cracking. The manufactured confidence had evaporated, leaving behind a raw, desperate vulnerability. I had seen that vulnerability before, in the early days, before the lies had begun to weave their insidious web around our lives. "Explain what, Phoebe?" I asked, finally meeting her gaze. "Explain how you could do this to us." To me. My voice, though quiet, held a steeliness I hadn't known I possessed. Tears welled in her eyes. Crocodile tears, I thought cynically. "It just happened," she whispered, her voice choked with faux emotion. "It meant nothing. Nothing." I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "A year of lies. Of sneaking around. Of betraying everything we built together. That means nothing." She opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. "Don't. Just don't." I stood, the movement slow and deliberate. I walked toward the window, looking out at the city lights twinkling in the distance. "He's coming, you know." Her head snapped up. "What?" "Ethan. He's coming." I turned to face her, a small, cruel smile playing on my lips. "I invited him." The doorbell rang. Phoebe's face was a mask of terror. I opened the door. Ethan stood there, a bouquet of wilting lilies in his hand, a nervous smile plastered on his face. He looked like a schoolboy caught with his hand in the cookie jar. He hadn't expected an audience. "John," he stammered, his eyes darting nervously between me and Phoebe, who stood frozen in the center of the room. "Ethan," I said, my voice deceptively calm. "Come in. Phoebe has something she wants to tell you." I stepped aside, ushering him into the room. He took a tentative step inside, the lilies drooping in his hand like a symbol of his wilting bravado. He looked at Phoebe, his eyes questioning. "Tell him, Phoebe," I said, my voice rising slightly. "Tell him about the receipts. Tell him about the lies. Tell him about how everything you've told him, everything you've built together, is based on a foundation of deceit." Phoebe remained silent, her eyes fixed on the floor. "Tell him," I roared, the sound echoing through the apartment. She flinched, her body trembling. Then, in a small, broken voice, she confessed. She told him everything, the affair, the lies, the manufactured emotions. She laid it all bare, her words tumbling over each other in a torrent of shame and regret. Ethan's face went from confusion to disbelief to rage. He threw the lilies at her feet, the white blooms scattering across the floor like fallen snowflakes. He screamed. He cursed. He accused. The scene unfolded before me like a grotesque play, and I, the director, watched with detached fascination. When his rage had finally subsided, he turned to me, his eyes blazing with hatred. "You set me up," he hissed. "I merely provided the truth," I replied calmly. "The truth you were too blind to see." He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. The sound reverberated through the apartment, punctuating the end of their charade. I turned to Phoebe, who stood amidst the scattered lilies, a broken, shattered figure. "It's over, Phoebe," I said, my voice devoid of any emotion. "Our marriage. Your affair. Everything. It's over." The next few days were a blur. Phoebe moved out, leaving behind the ghost of her presence and the lingering scent of her perfume. The divorce proceedings were swift and brutal. There were no tearful goodbyes, no last-minute reconciliations, just the cold, hard reality of the end. I sold the apartment, the place that held so many memories, both good and bad. I started over in a new city, with a new life. It wasn't easy. The pain lingered, a dull ache in my chest. But with each passing day, the ache lessened, replaced by a sense of quiet resolve. One evening, months later, I was sitting in a small cafe, nursing a cup of coffee. I glanced at the newspaper lying on the table next to me. A small article tucked away on page 3 caught my eye. It was a brief report about a local businessman, Ethan, who had declared bankruptcy after a series of bad investments. He had lost everything: his business, his house, his reputation. I folded the newspaper, a small, sad smile playing on my lips. Justice, I thought, is a dish best served cold. And sometimes, the best revenge is simply watching the world crash down around those who deserve it. I finished my coffee, paid the bill, and stepped out into the night. The city lights no longer held the same sting. The ache in my chest was gone, replaced by a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a long time. The future stretched before me, uncertain, yet full of possibility. And for the first time in a long time, I was ready to face it.